Okay, so I don't know how well you can see that back in there, but that is a cast K3E on the side of this engine. So that's a pretty good confirmation. This is a K3E 3-cylinder diesel. So I'll show you where we're going to get that head gasket ordered from. Okay, so after I made the last video where we actually tore it apart and everything, and my buddy that owns the tractor came over, and we sat around, looked up the head gasket online, and this is where we end up ordering it from. So this is a few days after the fact, but this is where it's coming from. Southern Global Tractor Parts is the name of the place. Now, we Google searched Case IH255 head gasket because it's a Case IH255 tractor. This came up. Then we went ahead and Google searched, just looking for more of a selection to kind of shop around. Google searched Mitsubishi K3E engine head gasket, and this came up again. So unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of selection. If you're just looking for a head gasket, we did find some other like upper engine kits, with more gaskets and stuff in them. They were quite a bit more expensive, but we pretty much just need the head gasket. So $80. So we got that ordered. That was Saturday that we ordered it. Today is Thursday, and I checked the shipping on it, and it's out for delivery right now, so I'm expecting it any minute. So this Southern Global Tractor Parts is where we ordered it, and hopefully it'll be here soon. We'll get it put on the tractor. I'll show you that. Okay, so UPS guy was just here, opened up the box, and compared the new one to the old one, hold them up, lay them on top of each other. Looks identical. Let's get this thing put on. Okay, so here's an update. Basically all I did was took a rag and wiped off the block and set that new head gasket down on the block. Wiped off the bottom of the head. I just placed the head right over top of it. And, I had cleaned up the bolts already, kind of chased the threads and everything down through the block. So all I did was put a little bit of motor oil on the bolts, kind of smeared around with my hand, drop all the bolts in. And there's 3 rows of bolts here. These first 2 are one size, and that last row of 3 bolts is another size. And the torque spec on these, I think it's 88 pounds on these, and on these was 58. So I torqued them, and I torqued this one, then 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 this one, and this one and this one. Then I went up here and did this one, and this one. So I kind of torqued from the center out. So from the center, kind of pushed it this way, pushed that way, and then did up here and kind of pushed this like that. So I'm kind of picturing if I had an air bubble or something, I was laying down in the center, and how to work that air bubble out. That's kind of how you want to lay that head out. You want to smooth it out from the center out. And I torqued it in 3 different torques. So I went around and did 30 on this bottom bunch first, and 20 on those. Then I came back and did 60 pounds and 40. And then I came back through at 90 pounds, or 88 pounds and 58 pounds. And then I went back after I did 58 on those upper 3. Then I came back through and I made sure everything was, I actually did get just a little bit out of these, because by the time I pulled these all down, then that left a little room up there. Anyhow, you get the picture. So I got my head back on. It's all bolted down. Next thing I'm going to do is grab the rocker assembly and set it on up here, and then we'll set the valve lash, and I'll show you all that right now. Okay, so I guess really the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to drop these push rods in, and you can tell I've got them marked. This is going to be a 2-handed thing, so I'm going to wipe those down real good, make sure they're good and clean, smear a little oil on them, and I'm going to drop all the push rods in holes. Then I'm going to set the rocker assembly on top of that. Okay, so here's a little update. Dropped all the push rods in, then I set the rocker assembly in on top. I torqued all 3 of these bolts. I couldn't find a good torque spec for them. I torqued them to 40. I figure they're not hard to get to. If I have to, if I can find a torque spec, I'll pop that valve cover off and re-torque them. But torqued them to 40 foot-pounds anyhow. Then the valve clearance should be 10 thousandths, and all these were like, I stuck 20 thousandths shim under the one, and it still needed more. So these were all probably about 30 thousandths. So they all needed tightened up, and there's videos I'm not going to go into detail on how to set the valve clearance. There's videos on YouTube on how to do that. So I got them all set. And the next thing I'm going to do is put the valve cover on and start putting little stuff back together. I'll hook up these fuel lines and stuff like that. I'll update you in a bit. Okay, so here's an update. You can see I've got the valve cover back on. That was pretty simple. That valve cover had like a rubber gasket. It was kind of stuck to the valve cover, and so it pulled real nice up off the head. So that gasket was in good shape. I went ahead and reused it. When you put your nuts back on, make sure you remember your little rubber seal. It's like a little conical seal that goes under that cup washer, and then your lock nut or your lock washer and your nut, and that all kind of forces that seal down in to the valve cover and keeps, that's your seal, keeps oil from coming up around the studs. Connected the power wire back to the glow plug, that first glow plug there. Kind of cleaned that up. Connected water temperature wire back up here. Connected my fuel lines back up, and I put there's a ground on that harness that goes to that intake bolt. So I pulled that bolt out, slid that ground under there, and then it's also got like this little wire, kind of a piece of twisty, I don't know what the hell you call it, holds the harness there. Put that back on. Also the tachometer cable, reinstalled that, and that's just a little hand nut. You slide the cable down in. It sits in a notch, so you got to line your cable up with the notch, which wasn't too bad. Slide that in there and tighten it up by your hand. The thing I'm working on now, this upper water pipe has been kind of leaky, and you can tell over the years it's getting like silicone or RTV or some kind of gasket material just kind of slapped up on there. So it's had some leaks. So I cleaned this up with a gasket scraper. I took a file to it real lightly to clean that surface up there. And then I'm working on the thermostat housing here. It was also kind of cruddy and pitted, and it hadn't been sealing, and it looked like it had been getting Band-Aid treatment. So again, cleaned up both surfaces on that with a file. Cleaned up that surface as well with a file. I cut myself out a couple of gaskets. I imagine you could run down to Napa or whatever, and they could probably line you up with a couple of gaskets. But man, if you guys ain't cutting your own gaskets, this is real common gasket material. You can pick that up for like $6 a roll, $6 or $8 a roll at Napa. Get yourself a set of hollow punches. You can get them at like tractor stores, a whole lot cheaper. You can buy them automotive stores, and pair of scissors, and you can make your own gaskets. You use the scissors to cut out the outline, and then use your punch set. You got all different sizes, and save yourself a bunch of money making gaskets. So I'll get this water housing. So the thermostat, I think my buddy's got one at the house. He's going to bring it over. So it did not have a thermostat in it before now, so we'll put one back in it. But essentially, the gasket goes down on the head, then that housing goes down, then let's see, the thermostat will go down, then the gasket, and then that water pipe goes on top of that, and 2 bolts hold the whole thing together. So I'm gonna get that put on, and I'll update you here in a bit. Okay, so I guess this is it. Remounted the alternator back on there, put a little tension with a crowbar in it. Put a crowbar in here, put a little tension on the belt, made sure the belt was on, on the fan and down there on the crankshaft. Tighten up the alternator. There's a bolt holding the bracket on here, then this bolt here on top, then there's also one underneath hiding. All 3 of them are same size head. So got my alternator refastened. For the time being, I went ahead and reassembled this upper water pipe assembly. And you can see that thermostat housing now, how it sits up proud off the head there, a couple inches. Reattach that hose, and also attach the lower water pipe, which again I just broke loose to try to drain the system as best I could. So I think that's pretty much it. I slid the intake line on and remounted the filter, and that's just this little clampy deal holds that whole assembly together. Waiting on my buddy. He's supposed to bring oil and a filter and some antifreeze, and we'll get this thing topped off. Change the oil, top off the antifreeze, and that should be pretty much it. So this project wasn't terribly hard. I didn't have to take out the injectors. I didn't have to you know, take apart those lines and stuff. Left that all there. Left in all the glow plugs in the head. So that's pretty much it on this end of it. The next thing is going to be these cylinders. All 4 cylinders on this loader are pretty leaky, so we're going to go ahead and rebuild all those cylinders. So consider, you know, if you like this video, hit the like button, consider subscribing, because I'll be making a video here in just a few minutes. I'm going to start on these cylinders, and I'm tinkering with stuff all the time out here in the garage, so you know, you never know what the heck I'm going to be working on. Could be this today, could be hit and miss engine over there. I've got to get that Farmall Cub back over here, get it put back together, doing a 12-volt conversion on it. So I hope you liked it, and leave a comment. Let me know if you didn't, how I can make it better. Well, that's it. We put a new fuel return lines on there. We replaced that clear vinyl stuff with some 3/16 fuel line and a couple new T-fittings. That's running great. So back to those hydraulic cylinders.